Jiwon Kim sat in her office aboard Earth's orbital station, reviewing trade agreements, when her communication panel lit up with an emergency priority signal. She had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 5 years, and she had never seen a signal like this before. The symbol on her screen indicated it came from the High Arbiter himself, the leader of all 847 species in the Council. Her hands shook slightly as she opened the message. The holographic projection showed High Arbiter Talon, a massive reptilian creature, with 4 arms and scales that shimmered like oil on water. His voice was deep and carried the weight of absolute authority. Ambassador Kim, the Galactic Council demands the immediate presence of Captain Minho Park. He must appear before the full Council within 7 standard cycles. Failure to comply will result in Earth's expulsion from the Council and immediate quarantine of your entire solar system. No exceptions. No appeals. The message ended abruptly. Jiwon sat in stunned silence. Minho Park? She searched her memory. The name was vaguely familiar. She pulled up Earth's citizen database and found him quickly. Minho Park, age 34, cargo ship captain. He ran supply routes to outer colony worlds. Nothing remarkable. No criminal record, no military service, no diplomatic experience. He was just an ordinary freight hauler. Why would the entire Galactic Council want him? Jiwon spent the next 6 hours trying to get answers. She contacted every council representative she knew, but they all refused to speak with her. Some simply closed the communication channel the moment she mentioned Minho's name. Others looked frightened before disconnecting. The Velkari ambassador, a being made of living crystal, actually shattered part of her own structure in what appeared to be terror before cutting the transmission. Something was very wrong. Jiwon traced Minho's last known location to a mining outpost on Kepler 442b, a small colony world on the edge of human space. She boarded the fastest shuttle available and made the 3-day journey alone, not wanting to involve anyone else until she understood what was happening. The mining outpost was exactly what she expected: dirty, loud, and filled with rough people doing hard work. She found Minho in a bar that smelled like sweat and cheap alcohol. He sat at a corner table playing cards with 3 miners, a small pile of credits in front of him. He looked completely ordinary. Brown hair, average height, wearing a worn flight jacket and pants that had seen better days. His hands were calloused from years of manual work, and his face had the kind of tan that came from spending time in different suns across multiple worlds. Minho Park? Jiwon asked, approaching his table. He looked up, and she saw intelligence in his eyes that his casual appearance tried to hide. Depends who's asking. Ambassador Jiwon Kim, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. I need to speak with you. It's urgent. The miners at his table suddenly became very interested in their drinks. Minho's expression didn't change, but Jiwon noticed his jaw tighten slightly. Not interested in council business. The council has summoned you specifically. If you don't appear before them in 5 days, Earth gets expelled, and humanity gets trapped in our solar system. Forever. Earth. Minho's cards fell from his hands and scattered across the table. His face went pale. No. They can't. I kept my end of the bargain. What bargain? Jiwon demanded. Minho stood up quickly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need to make a call. Give me an hour. We don't have an hour to waste. My ship is at the landing pad. We leave now. You don't understand what you're asking, Minho said quietly. His hands were shaking now. If they want me, it's because of what happened. And if they're scared enough to threaten Earth, then things are worse than I thought. Jiwon grabbed his arm. Then explain it to me on the way. Every minute we waste is a minute closer to humanity's isolation. Minho stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. He left credits on the table for the miners and followed her out of the bar without another word. On the ship, Minho barely spoke for the first day. He spent most of his time staring at the star charts or checking the ship's long-range sensors. Jiwon tried multiple times to get him to explain what was happening, but he kept deflecting her questions. Just tell me this, she finally said on the second day, cornering him in the small galley. Why does the council want you? What did you do? Minho poured himself coffee with hands that hadn't stopped shaking since they left the mining station. 3 years ago, my cargo ship had a drive malfunction. I ended up in the Ashkin Nebula. Jiwon felt her blood go cold. The Ashkin Nebula was marked as a dead zone on every galactic map. The Council had declared it off-limits 50,000 years ago, and no one questioned that order. You went into the Ashkin Nebula and survived? She whispered. I met something there. Something the Council thought was gone. The name meant nothing to Jiwon, but the way Minho said it made her skin crawl. Who are the Devourers? Not who. What? Minho sat down heavily. They're a race that eats entire civilizations. Not for food or resources. They consume them for knowledge, for experience. They've been doing it for millions of years, moving from galaxy to galaxy. And you met them and survived? Jiwon couldn't believe what she was hearing. They gave me a choice. A game. If I won, they would leave Earth alone for 1,000 years. If I lost, humanity would be harvested immediately. Minho laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm just a cargo hauler who plays cards in mining station bars. And I was gambling for the fate of the entire human race. Did you win? Jiwon asked, though she already knew the answer. Obviously. We're still here. Minho stood up and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. But I've been having dreams since then. Visions. Symbols I don't understand. And the Devourers told me something before they let me go. They said they'd return in 1,000 years. And humanity better be ready. They reached Nexus Prime on the morning of the 7th day, cutting it close to the deadline. The station was massive. Larger than Earth's moon. A construction of 1,000 different species working together. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its countless ports. Jiwon and Minho took a transport to the council chamber. As they walked through the corridors, Jiwon noticed other species literally moving away from them. Some pointed at Minho and spoke in hushed, frightened tones. Word had spread that he was here. The council chamber was an enormous amphitheater that could hold thousands. Today, it was packed. Delegates from hundreds of species filled the seats, and every single one of them turned to stare as Minho entered. High Arbiter Talon stood at the council chamber, remained silent after Minho's words. High Arbiter Talon gestured with one of his 4 arms, and a holographic display appeared above the center podium. It showed the Ashkin Nebula, a swirling mass of dark clouds and dying stars. Tell us everything, Talon commanded. Start from the beginning. Minho took a deep breath. Jiwon stood beside him, her hands clenched tightly as she prepared to hear the full story for the first time. 3 years ago, I was running a supply route to the Frontier 7 colony, Minho began. His voice was steady now, as if telling the story gave him purpose. My quantum drive started malfunctioning. The navigation system went crazy, and before I could shut it down, the drive engaged on its own. When I dropped out of faster-than-light travel, I was deep inside the Ashkin Nebula. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Velkari ambassador, who had reassembled her crystalline structure, began vibrating with what looked like fear. My ship was dead in space. Main power offline, communications down, life support running on emergency reserves. I spent 2 hours trying to fix the quantum drive when my sensors detected something. Minho paused, and Jiwon saw his hands begin to shake again. A fleet. But not like any fleet I'd ever seen. No work. The ships were organic, alive. They looked like massive creatures swimming through space, and they seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Looking at them made my eyes hurt. The holographic display changed, showing blurry sensor footage of enormous, twisted shapes that seemed to phase in and out of reality. Jiwon felt sick, just looking at them. My ship was pulled into the largest vessel by some kind of tractor beam, Minho continued. But it wasn't technology. It felt more like being swallowed. I found myself in a chamber that was impossibly large, bigger than my entire ship from the outside. And then, I heard them. The collective mind. What did they say? Talon asked. They spoke directly into my brain. Not in words. Exactly. More like concepts and feelings that my mind translated into language. Minho closed his eyes. Remembering, they told me they were the Devourers. They said they had been harvesting civilizations across multiple galaxies for millions of years. They consumed entire species not for food or resources, but for knowledge and experience. A council member from the Dranic species, a floating jellyfish-like being, spoke up in a trembling voice. 50,000 years ago, the Devourers came to our region of space. We lost 12 entire species before they withdrew. Billions of beings consumed in a matter of months. We thought they were gone forever. They never left. Minho said quietly. They just moved to other galaxies. They work in cycles. But now they've returned, and they've marked this entire region for harvest. Starting with humanity, and everything within 100 light-years of Earth. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some species were calling for humanity to be expelled immediately, to be offered as a sacrifice to appease the Devourers. Others were demanding emergency evacuation plans. Silence. Talon's voice boomed through the chamber. Let him finish. Minho waited until the noise died down. The Devourers have a custom. They grant every species one chance to negotiate their survival. They presented me with a challenge. A game. If I won, they would leave Earth and all its colonies untouched for 1,000 years. If I lost, humanity would be harvested immediately, and they would accelerate their timeline for consuming the rest of this galaxy. And you accepted? Jiwan asked, horrified. Just like that? You gambled with humanity's future? What choice did I have? Minho shot back. Describe the game, Talon ordered. It was something they designed themselves. Part chess, part poker, part psychological warfare. It took place partly in my mind and partly in their dimension. I can't fully explain it because human language doesn't have words for some of the concepts involved. Minho rubbed his temples. They told me they had played this game against the greatest minds of thousands of species. No one had ever won. How long did you play? A council member asked. 3 days without stopping. No food, no sleep, no breaks. Just the game. Minho's voice became distant. The Devourers showed me every move I could make, every possible outcome. Their simulations were perfect. They could calculate millions of strategies in seconds. Every logical path led to my defeat. Then how did you win? Jiwan whispered. Minho smiled. But it was a tired, haunted smile. Because I stopped playing logically. Humans are good at improvisation, at making decisions that don't make sense on paper. I started bluffing, taking risks that had almost no chance of success. I played chaotically, unpredictably. I refused to follow optimal strategies. He pulled up a holographic display of complex mathematical equations and strategic patterns. The collective mind had calculated that my winning move had a 0.003% chance of success. It was so unlikely that they hadn't even prepared a response for it. When I executed it, there was this moment of absolute silence in my head. I think I actually shocked them. And they honored the agreement? Talon asked carefully. They did. But before they released me, the collective mind told me something. Minho's expression became grim. They said, "You have given your species time. Do not waste it. We will return in 1,000 years. Prepare. Show us what humanity can become." The chamber fell silent again. Jiwan felt a chill run down her spine. The implications were staggering. "That's why you fear me," Minho said, addressing the entire council. "Not because of what I did, but because of what it means. The Devourers don't just consume species randomly. They test them. and humanity passed the first test. You doomed us all, the Velkari ambassador said, her crystalline voice ringing with accusation. You gave the Devourers a reason to return. You should have lost quickly. Let them take humanity and leave the rest of us alone. Instead, you've made them interested in this region of space again. Other council members began agreeing. Jiwan was appalled. They were actually suggesting that Minho should have accepted humanity's extinction to protect them. How dare you, Jiwan said, her voice shaking with anger. No species should be expected to accept extinction without fighting. Would any of you have done differently? Most species would not have been given the choice, Talon said heavily. The Devourers only offer their game to species they find interesting. They clearly saw something in humanity that intrigued them, and that's the problem, another council member said. For 50,000 years, we have maintained peace by avoiding the Ashkan Nebula entirely. We have been careful, quiet, and unthreatening. Humanity's refusal to accept extinction has drawn the Devourers' attention back to us. Minho's jaw clenched. So, your solution is to hide and hope they forget about you? How's that worked for the last 50,000 years? They never left. They were just busy elsewhere. We have evidence. Talon interrupted. In the 3 years since your encounter, 17 survey ships have disappeared near the Ashken Nebula. We believe the Devourers are testing the boundaries of their agreement, looking for loopholes. Your actions may have bought humanity time, but they have made all of us vulnerable. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you like tonight for better of the morning. The Divuan escapes from other parter. We're makes of the one of I. Thanks for watching. Or maybe, a new voice called out. We should be grateful that someone finally stood up to them. A figure emerged from one of the upper galleries. He was an elderly alien, with silver skin and 3 eyes, wearing the robes of a senior ambassador. Jiwan recognized him as Hyunwoo Choi, representative of the Kashari, one of the oldest species in the council. Ambassador Hyunwoo, Talon acknowledged. You wish to speak? I do. Hyunwoo walked slowly down to the main floor. The council has misunderstood both Captain Park's actions and humanity's nature. Humans don't simply survive. They adapt and overcome. The Devourers gave humanity 1,000 years, not as a gift, but as a test. They want to see what humans will become when faced with an extinction deadline. And that should terrify us, the Velkari ambassador said. Perhaps, Hyunwoo agreed. But consider this. In the 3 years since Captain Park's encounter, Earth has tripled its defense spending. Humanity has colonized 40 new systems. They have made breakthrough advances in quantum weaponry and ship design that we thought impossible. They are not wasting the time they were given. They are preparing for war. 2. The chamber erupted in chaos once more. Jiwan looked at Minho, who seemed unsurprised by this revelation. She realized that Earth's military had been preparing. Jiwan and Minho were escorted to a small waiting room deep inside Nexus Prime. The walls were transparent metal, showing the vast interior of the station where thousands of species lived and worked together. It should have been beautiful, but right now, it felt like a prison. How long do you think they'll deliberate? Jiwan asked, pacing back and forth. Minho sat calmly in a chair, his eyes closed. As long as it takes for them to decide whether to save us or sacrifice us. You don't seem worried. I've been worried for 3 years, Minho said quietly. Ever since the Devourers let me go. I knew this day would come eventually. The council would find out, and they'd have to make a choice about humanity. Jiwan stopped pacing and looked at him carefully. You've changed since the encounter, haven't you? You're not just an ordinary cargo hauler anymore. Minho opened his eyes. The Devourers changed me. When I was in their dimension, playing that game, I saw things. Patterns in reality that humans aren't supposed to see. Sometimes, I still dream about them. Symbols and equations that I can't understand but somehow know are important. Before Jiwan could respond, the door opened. A human woman in military uniform entered quickly, and sealed the door behind her. She was young, maybe late 20s, with short black hair and alert eyes that constantly scanned the room. "Who are you?" Ji-won demanded. "Commander Salmon Lee, Earth Military Intelligence." She pulled out a small device and swept the room, checking for surveillance equipment. "We don't have much time. The Council's public deliberation is a show." Behind closed doors, 6 major species are already planning a preemptive solution. "What kind of solution?" Minho asked, suddenly tense. "They want to quarantine Sol's system, cut you off completely from faster-than-light travel, trap humanity in your home system forever." Salmon's expression was grim. "Some factions are arguing for more permanent measures. They want to eliminate the human threat before you become strong enough to challenge the established order." Ji-won felt sick. They would commit genocide to maintain their peace? Not genocide, just forced isolation. They'll spin it as a protective measure, claiming they're preventing humanity from drawing the devourers back. Salmon pulled up holographic files on her device. "But there's more. Those 17 missing survey ships? I have evidence they weren't destroyed by the devourers." She projected images of ship debris. Ji-won leaned closer, studying the damage patterns. "What am I looking at?" Weapon signatures that match Earth technology. Someone destroyed those ships using human plasma weapons and made it look like humanity was attacking Council vessels." Salmon's voice was hard. "Someone is framing us to justify the quarantine." Minho stood up quickly. Who? Who would do that?" "There's a shadow faction within the Council. Species who have been planning this for years. They're not trying to start a war. They're trying to prevent one by eliminating humanity before you become dangerous." Salmon looked at both of them. "The Devourer's 1,000-year deadline has made humanity unpredictable. You innovate too fast. You refuse to accept limits. That terrifies the Council more than any external threat. So we're being punished for not giving up?" Ji-won's voice shook with anger. "You're being punished for reminding them what they've lost," Salmon said. "For 50,000 years, the Council has been stagnant, safe, stable, and slowly dying. Humanity represents change, and change is terrifying to those who have learned to fear it." "What do we do?" Minho asked. "We find proof of the shadow faction and expose them before the Council votes." Salmon handed Minho a data chip. "This contains everything I've gathered so far. Encrypted communications, financial transactions, and the locations of the destroyed ships. But I need more. I need the ships themselves, or at least their black boxes." "Those ships were destroyed near the Ashkan Nebula," Minho said, studying the data. "You want us to go back there? It's the only way. The shadow faction won't expect you to investigate. They think you're trapped here, waiting for the Council's decision." Salmon moved to the door. "I've arranged for a small shuttle in Docking Bay 12. It's registered under a false name. Get to those ships, find evidence, and get back here before the Council votes in 48 hours. "This is insane," Ji-won protested. "We can't just leave. We're supposed to wait for the Council's judgment." "If you wait, humanity loses," Salmon said bluntly. "The vote is already decided, unless we change the game." "Isn't that what humans do best, Captain Park? Change the game?" Minho met her eyes and nodded slowly. "Get us to that shuttle." They moved through Nexus Prime's vast corridors carefully, avoiding main thoroughfares. Salmon led them through maintenance tunnels and service passages that few knew existed. Ji-won kept expecting alarms to sound, for security forces to appear and arrest them. "How do you know so much about this station?" Ji-won whispered as they climbed through a narrow access shaft. "I've been embedded with the Galactic Defense Initiative for 2 years," Salmon replied. "I know every secret passage and blind spot. That's how I discovered the Shadow faction. I was monitoring their communications as part of my intelligence work. They reached Docking Bay 12 without incident. The shuttle was small and unmarked, designed for short-range reconnaissance. Minho climbed into the pilot's seat and began the startup sequence, while Ji-won and Soman secured themselves. One more thing, Soman said as the engines powered up. The Shadow faction has assets everywhere. Trust no one except each other. If someone tries to stop you, assume they're working for the faction. What about you? Minho asked. I'm staying here to run interference. I'll try to delay the council vote and spread doubt about the evidence against humanity. Soman smiled tightly. Good luck. Earth is counting on you. The shuttle launched smoothly, slipping out of Nexus Prime's docking bay and into open space. Minho set a course for the last known position of one of the destroyed survey ships. The journey would take 6 hours at maximum speed. I can't believe we're doing this, Jiwan said, watching Nexus Prime shrink behind them. We just became fugitives from the Galactic Council. We're not fugitives. We're investigating. Minho checked their sensors carefully. No one's following us yet. Maybe we'll actually pull this off. They traveled in silence for several hours. Jiwan tried to rest but couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. Just 3 days ago, she had been a respected ambassador, handling routine trade negotiations. Now she was fleeing into dangerous space with a cargo hauler who had gambled with humanity's fate. Minho, she said finally. When you played that game with the Devourers, were you scared? He was quiet for a long moment. Terrified. Every second. I thought I was going to lose. I kept imagining Earth being consumed. Billions of people dying because I made one wrong move. The weight of that responsibility almost broke me. But you won. I got lucky. That 0.003% chance? That was pure luck. If I had to play that game again, I'd probably lose. Minho's hands tightened on the controls. That's why this 1,000-year deadline terrifies me. The Devourers expect humanity to evolve, to become something greater. What if we can't? What if I bought us time we can't use? You heard Hyunwoo, Jiwon said. Humanity is already changing. We're innovating, expanding, preparing. You gave us the chance to fight back, or I gave us enough rope to hang ourselves, Minho muttered. The sensors began beeping urgently. Minho pulled up the display and cursed. We've got company. A ship just dropped out of faster-than-light travel behind us. It's matching our course. Council patrol? Jiwan asked nervously. No, the signature is wrong. Minho's fingers flew over the controls, pulling up more detailed scans. It's a Galactic Defense Initiative vessel. One of Soman's people. That's good, isn't it? But even as Jiwan said it, she saw the expression on Minho's face. Soman told us the Shadow faction has assets everywhere. Minho's voice was tense. That ship isn't here to help us. It's here to stop us. The pursuing ship opened fire without warning. Plasma bolts streaked past their shuttle, coming dangerously close. Minho threw their small craft into evasive maneuvers, diving toward a nearby asteroid field. Why are they shooting at us? Jiwon shouted, gripping her seat as the shuttle spun and twisted. Because we're getting too close to the truth, Minho said, through gritted teeth. He pushed the shuttle into the asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks at speeds that made Jiwon's stomach lurch. The larger ship followed, still firing. One blast clipped their rear shield, sending power fluctuations through the shuttle's systems. Minho compensated quickly, using the asteroids as cover while he plotted an escape route. They're not trying to disable us, he said, studying the attack pattern. They're trying to destroy us completely. No witnesses. He made a desperate decision, diving toward the largest asteroid in the field. At the last second, he fired their maneuvering thrusters and spun the shuttle around the asteroid's gravity well, using the slingshot effect to gain speed. The pursuing ship tried to follow but wasn't as nimble. It clipped the asteroid's surface, sending it spinning out of control. Minho didn't wait to see if they recovered. He pushed the engines to maximum and fled deeper into the asteroid field. Eventually, they lost their pursuer in the maze of rocks and space debris. Minho brought the shuttle to hide in the shadow of a massive asteroid while they made repairs. The debris field floated in the darkness like a graveyard of metal and broken dreams. Minho carefully navigated the shuttle through twisted hull sections and scattered equipment, searching for the survey ship's black box. The ship had been completely destroyed, torn apart with precision that suggested weapons rather than accident. "This isn't random destruction," Jiwan observed, studying the damage through their sensors. "Someone took their time with this, and they wanted it to look like human weapons did it," Minho agreed. He brought the shuttle alongside a larger piece of debris and activated the magnetic grapple. "I'm going outside to search manually. The black box should have emergency power and be broadcasting a weak signal. But all this metal is interfering with our sensors." "I'll go with you," Jiwan said immediately. They suited up in spacewalk gear and exited through the shuttle's airlock. The silence of space was eerie after the constant hum of ship systems. Jiwan followed Minho as he used his suit's thrusters to move between debris pieces, scanning each one with a handheld detector. "Found something," Minho called out after 20 minutes of searching. He had discovered a section of the ship's command deck, still partially intact. The black box should be near the captain's station. They entered through a torn opening in the hull. Inside, the command deck was frozen and dark. Bodies floated in the zero gravity. Crew members who had died when their ship was destroyed. Jiwan felt sick looking at them. "They were just explorers," she whispered. "A scientific survey team. Who would murder them? People who need a war," Minho said grimly. He located the black box secured behind the captain's chair and carefully removed it. "Got it. Let's get back to the shuttle." As they exited the wreckage, Jiwan noticed something odd. "Minho, look at the hull damage here. These scorch marks." He moved closer to examine what she had found. The pattern of weapon impacts was too regular, too perfect. "You're right. These signatures are too clean. Real combat damage is messy, chaotic. This looks like someone fired test shots to create evidence. So not only did they destroy this ship with human-style weapons, they deliberately made it look obvious," Jiwan said. "They wanted the council to notice. They wanted everyone to believe humanity was attacking." They returned to the shuttle and immediately connected the black box to their computer systems. Minho worked to decrypt the data, while Jiwan monitored their sensors for any approaching ships. "This is strange," Minho muttered, scrolling through the recovered files. The ship's log shows they were investigating unusual readings near the edge of Council space. Standard scientific work. Then their sensors detected an approaching vessel. The ship that attacked them? No. That's what's strange. Their sensors couldn't identify it properly. The readings were scrambled, like the ship was using some kind of cloaking technology. But here's the interesting part. Minho pulled up a data file. 30 seconds before they were destroyed, their communications officer tried to send an emergency message. It was cut off mid-transmission, but I can recover part of it. He played the audio file. A frightened voice spoke rapidly. "This is Survey Ship Horizon. We are under attack by unknown vessel. Weapon signatures match human design, but configuration is wrong. This isn't a human ship. Repeat. This is not a..." The message ended in static. Jiwan and Minho stared at each other. "They knew," Jiwan said. "The crew knew they were being framed before they died, and someone made sure that message never reached anyone," Minho added. "The Shadow faction has resources and reach we can't even imagine. They can destroy ships, falsify evidence, and cover their tracks across multiple systems. We need to get this back to Nexus Prime," Jiwan said urgently. "This proves humanity is innocent." Before Minho could respond, their sensors screamed a warning. Multiple ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel all around them. Not just one or two, but an entire squadron. "That's impossible," Minho said, staring at the display. "They couldn't have tracked us here. We made sure we weren't followed." A communication channel opened forcibly, overriding their systems. A human face appeared on their screen. A man in his 40s, with cold eyes and a military bearing. "Captain Park." "Ambassador Kim. I am Captain Dae-Ho Kang of the Galactic Defense Initiative." You are ordered to surrender immediately and return to Nexus Prime for arrest. On what charges? Ji-won demanded. Theft of council property, unauthorized departure from Nexus Prime, and interference in official council business. Daeho's expression was hard. Don't make this difficult. You're surrounded and outgunned. He's one of them, Minho said quietly. The Shadow Faction. That's why he found us so easily. Very perceptive, Daeho said, having heard their comment. Yes. I work for those who understand that humanity must be contained. Your species is too dangerous, too unpredictable. The Devourers took interest in you, and that makes you a threat to galactic stability. You murdered those survey teams, Ji-won accused. You framed humanity to justify a quarantine. I did what was necessary, Daeho replied without emotion. The Council needed motivation to act. A few ships sacrificed to save trillions of lives across the galaxy. It's simple. Mathematics. You're human, Minho said, disbelief in his voice. How can you betray your own species? I'm saving them. The Shadow Faction has been managing galactic affairs for thousands of years. We maintain stability, prevent wars, and ensure survival. Humanity's refusal to accept limits threatens everything. Better to contain you now than watch you drag the entire galaxy into a war with the Devourers. Daeho's ships began closing in, weapons charged and ready. Last chance, surrender the black box data and come peacefully, or we destroy you and report that you died in an unfortunate accident. Minho looked at Ji-won. She saw the question in his eyes. They could surrender and maybe survive. Or they could run and probably die. But keep the evidence safe. Do what you do best, she said quietly. Minho smiled, and his hands flew across the controls. Hold on tight. He didn't fly away from Daeho's ships. Instead, he flew directly toward them, accelerating to maximum speed. The squadron scattered in surprise, not expecting such a suicidal move. But Minho wasn't being suicidal. He was counting on confusion. As they passed through the formation, Minho fired their shuttle's emergency flares and sensor decoys, creating a cloud of interference. Then, he dove back into the debris field, using the wreckage as cover. He's insane, they heard Daeho shouting over the communication channel. All ships, weapons free. Destroy that shuttle. Plasma bolts and missiles filled space around them. Minho performed maneuvers that should have been impossible for such a small craft, spinning between debris pieces and using their mass to deflect weapons fire. One missile exploded close enough to shake the shuttle, but Minho kept flying. They're hurting us, Ji-won realized, watching the tactical display. They're pushing us toward the edge of the debris field where they can get clear shots. I know, Minho said calmly. That's what I'm counting on. He suddenly changed direction, flying not away from the squadron but straight down relative to the debris field's plane. Daeho's ships followed, maintaining their formation. But Minho had noticed something they hadn't. The debris field was near a large asteroid with significant gravity. At the last possible second, Minho fired their thrusters and used the asteroid's gravity to slingshot around it. The pursuing ships tried to follow, but their larger size and formation made them less agile. Two ships collided trying to avoid the asteroid, and a third clipped its surface and tumbled away. Minho used the confusion to escape, pushing their damaged shuttle to its absolute limits. They fled deeper into the region near the Ashken Nebula, where Daeho's remaining ships eventually lost them in the sensor interference. When they were finally safe, Ji-won let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was incredible flying. That was desperation, Minho corrected. He examined their systems. We're in bad shape. Shields are down. Engines are damaged. And we're leaking atmosphere. We have maybe 6 hours of life support left. Can we make it back to Nexus Prime? Not directly. We don't have enough power. Minho studied their position. But there's another option. We're close to the Ashken Nebula entrance. If we go in there, we can hide and make repairs. Go into the nebula? Jiwan was horrified. That's where the Devourers are. It's also the last place Daeho will follow us, Minho pointed out. The Shadow faction is terrified of the Devourers. They won't risk going in there. What if the Devourers find us? Minho looked at her seriously. Then maybe we ask them for help. They gave humanity 1,000 years because they saw potential in us. Maybe they'll be interested to know that other species are trying to eliminate that potential. It was a crazy plan. Jiwan knew they should try to reach friendly territory, contact Saman, or find another council representative who might listen. But they were hunted, damaged, and running out of time. Do it, she said finally. We didn't come this far to give up now. Minho set course for the Ashkan Nebula. As they approached the swirling darkness, Jiwan felt a chill run through her. The nebula had been forbidden territory for 50,000 years. Ships that entered it never returned, but they had no choice. Somewhere in that darkness might be answers that could save humanity, or they might find only death. Either way, they were committed now. The shuttle crossed into the Neb the Devourer. Ships surrounded their damaged shuttle like predators circling wounded prey. Minho kept his hands steady on the controls, even though Jiwan could see them trembling. She understood why. These beings had nearly consumed humanity 3 years ago, and now they were back in their territory, helpless and vulnerable. What do we do? Jiwan whispered. Wait, Minho said. They're not attacking. They're curious. He was right. The organic ships simply floated in the nebula's strange currents. Their impossible forms shifting and changing, as if they couldn't quite exist fully in normal space. Then Jiwan felt a presence pushing into her mind. Not painful, but alien and vast beyond comprehension. Why have you returned, Minho Park? The voice spoke directly into their thoughts, a choir of millions of minds speaking as one. The agreement holds. 997 years remain before we test humanity again. We didn't come to break the agreement, Minho said out loud, knowing they could hear his thoughts anyway. We came because others are trying to destroy humanity before your test. They're framing us for crimes we didn't commit to justify our elimination. There was a moment of silence that seemed to stretch forever. Minho transmitted the data from the black box. Information flowed from their shuttle into the Devourer ships, and Jiwan felt the collective mind processing it, examining every detail with an intelligence that made human computers seem like stone tools. Interesting, the voice said finally. There is treachery among the council species. They fear what humanity might become more than they fear us. Can you help us? Jiwan asked, surprised by her own boldness. Will you help us expose the truth? We do not interfere in the politics of lesser species. That is not our purpose. The collective mind paused. But you intrigue us. You return to the place where you nearly died, seeking answers in the territory of your would-be destroyers. This shows courage or desperation. Perhaps both. The shuttle suddenly lurched as one of the Devourer ships extended something like a tentacle of pure energy. It connected to their hull, and Jiwan gasped as information flooded into her mind. Not words or images, but pure knowledge, overwhelming and vast. 3 years ago, we gave you symbols in dreams, the collective mind said to Minho. You did not understand them, but they were coordinates, a gift for when you were ready. That time is now. The knowledge resolved into clarity. Coordinates deep within the Ashkan Nebula, leading to something ancient and important. Jiwan saw them too, burned into her memory as clearly as if she had always known them. What's at those coordinates? Minho asked. Truth. The collective mind replied simply. Go. You have 6 hours of life support. It will be enough. The Devourer ships withdrew, vanishing back into the nebula's depths. Minho and Jiwan sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing what had just happened. They helped us, Jiwan said in disbelief. Because they're testing us, Minho said, entering the coordinates into their navigation system. They want to see if we're smart enough to find the truth and strong enough to use it. The journey deeper into the nebula was terrifying. Space itself seemed unstable here, with colors that shouldn't exist and distances that didn't make sense. Their instruments gave readings that contradicted each other. But the coordinates were clear, pulling them forward like a beacon. After 3 hours of careful navigation, they found it. A massive structure, floating in the heart of the nebula, ancient beyond measure. It was built from materials that didn't register on any of their sensors, formed into shapes that hurt to look at directly. "What is this place?" Jiwon breathed. "A data repository," Minho said, reading the information that still echoed in his mind from the Devourers. "Built by the Precursors, the first spacefaring civilization in this galaxy. They existed millions of years ago, long before any current council species evolved. They docked their shuttle at what appeared to be an entrance. The station's systems activated automatically, recognizing their presence and providing atmosphere and light. They removed their helmets and explored carefully. The interior was vast, filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with soft light. When Minho touched one, it activated, projecting holographic information into the air around them. Ancient text in languages that predated anything in the galactic databases. But somehow, Minho could read them. The symbols from his dreams provided the key. "The Precursors built the Devourers," he said, reading the flowing text. "They weren't always consumers. They were protectors, created as a fail-safe mechanism." "Protecting against what?" Jiwon asked, moving closer to read over his shoulder. Minho touched another crystal, and new information appeared. What he saw made his blood run cold. The entropy cascade. A phenomenon that occurs when a civilization becomes too technologically stagnant. When innovation stops, when species stop evolving and adapting, space-time itself begins to break down around them. The hologram showed simulations of what happened during an entropy cascade. Entire star systems simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed but unmade, as if reality itself forgot they had ever been there. It was slow, taking thousands of years, but inevitable once it started. "The Devourers were programmed to prevent this," Minho continued, his voice shaking as he understood. "They consume civilizations that have stopped evolving. They harvest the knowledge and force survivors to innovate, adapt, and grow. They're not evil. They're doing exactly what they were designed to do." Jiwon felt sick. The Council's 50,000 years of peace, their stable, unchanging society, is exactly what triggers the cascade, Minho finished. "The Devourers left this region 50,000 years ago because the Council agreed to change, to keep evolving. But they didn't. They lied. They built a stagnant, unchanging society and hoped the Devourers wouldn't notice. He accessed more data, and what he found was even worse. Early signs of the entropy cascade have already begun. Temporal anomalies in older council systems. Reality degradation that they've been covering up. The council knows they're dying, and they're too afraid to change. That's why they fear humanity," Jiwon said, understanding flooding through her. "We represent change. We refuse to accept limits. We force innovation wherever we go. The Devourers recognize this in us," Minho agreed. "That's why they gave us 1,000 years. They want humanity to survive, because we're what the galaxy needs. We're the catalyst that can force the Council to evolve or die." Jiwon sat down heavily, overwhelmed by the implications. "So what do we do? If we share this information, it might start a war. The Council will see it as humanity trying to destroy their way of life. Or it might save them," Minho countered. "If they understand what's really happening, they might choose to change before it's too late. And if they don't," Minho was quiet for a long moment, "then the Devourers will return early and do what they were always meant to do. Consume the stagnant and make room for the new." He began downloading all the data from the Precursor repository into their shuttle's computer. Terabytes of information. The complete history of the Devourers and the truth about the entropy cascade. Evidence that would change everything. We have to get back to Nexus Prime, Jiwan said. We have less than 2 hours of life support left, and 24 hours before the Council votes on humanity's fate. They returned to the shuttle and began the journey back through the nebula. Their damaged ship barely held together, but the coordinates the Devourers had given them provided a safe path through the worst of the spatial distortions. As they neared the nebula's edge, their communication systems suddenly came to life. Saman's voice crackled through, distorted but urgent. Minho, Jiwan, if you're receiving this, you need to know the Council has moved up the vote. It's happening in 6 hours. The Shadow faction convinced them that humanity is too dangerous to wait. They're going to quarantine Earth immediately, unless you can provide evidence to stop them. We have evidence? Minho transmitted back. Not just about the Shadow faction. About everything. The Devourers, the entropy cascade, all of it. But we need time to reach Nexus Prime. Transmitted. We need time to reach Nexus Prime. You won't make it, Saman's voice said grimly. Deho has ships positioned at every approach vector to the station. He's been given authority to stop you by any means necessary. Then we'll have to go through him, Minho said. With a damaged shuttle and no weapons? Saman sounded desperate. You'll be destroyed. Minho looked at Jiwan, and she saw determination in his eyes. The same determination that had won a game with 0.003% odds. The same stubborn human refusal to accept the impossible. Tell the Council we're coming, Minho said. Tell them we have the truth about the Devourers and the real threat facing the galaxy. Tell them that if they want to survive, they'll hear us out. He cut the transmission and pushed their damaged engines to maximum. They had 6 hours to reach Nexus Prime and expose the Shadow faction. 6 hours to prove that humanity deserved to survive. 6 hours to save not just Earth, but possibly the entire galaxy from a slow death they didn't even know they were dying. Are you ready for this? Jiwan asked. Minho's hands were steady on the controls now. No more shaking. No more fear. Just focus and determination. The Devourers gave humanity a test. Let's show them what we're made of. They accelerated toward Nexus Prime, toward Deho's blockade, toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of billions. Behind them, in the depths of the Ashken Nebula, the Devourers watched and waited to see if their faith in humanity was justified. Ula's outer boundary, and sensors immediately began showing impossible readings. Space itself seemed to twist and fold in ways that shouldn't be possible. Minho fought to keep their course steady, as strange forces pulled at the ship. I'm getting readings, Jiwan said, staring at her console in disbelief. There's something out there. Something massive. I know, Minho whispered. I can feel them. The Devourers. They know we're here. In the swirling darkness ahead, shapes began to form. Organic ships that existed partially in multiple dimensions. The Devourers had found them, and now Minho and Jiwan would learn whether humanity's gamble 3 years ago had earned them allies or simply delayed the inevitable. That was too close, Jiwan said, her hands still shaking. It proves Saman was right. The Shadow faction doesn't want us finding evidence. Minho examined their damaged systems. We've got enough power to reach the debris field. But we'll be vulnerable if anyone else finds us. Then we better make this count, Jiwan said firmly. We came here for proof. Let's get it and expose these people. Minho nodded and set course for the destroyed ship's last known position. They had 42 hours before the Council voted on humanity's fate. The clock was ticking, and somewhere in the vast darkness ahead, evidence waited that could either save Earth or doom it forever. In secret, and Minho had probably known about it. This is exactly what we feared, Talon said. Humanity will drag us into a war with the Devourers. Minho stood tall and spoke clearly. The Devourers told me they've been harvesting galaxies for millions of years. They've never stopped. They only pause. Your peace is an illusion. You've been hiding while they prepare. Maybe it's time someone fought back. The weight of those words hung in the air. Talon dismissed them. ordering Minho and Jiwon to leave while the council deliberated. As they walked out, Jiwon realized that Earth's fate hung by a thread, and the entire galaxy was about to be forced to make a choice between comfortable hiding and dangerous resistance. Nerpodium. His forearms spread wide. Minho Park. 3 years ago, you made first contact with the Devourers in the Ashkin Nebula. You are the only being in recorded history to encounter them and survive. The chamber fell into complete silence. Jiwon could hear her own heartbeat. We must know, Talon continued, his voice echoing through the massive space. What did you do? What game did you play? And most importantly, what did you promise them? Minho walked down the long aisle toward the center of the chamber. Jiwon followed, feeling the weight of thousands of alien eyes on them. When Minho reached the speaking platform, he looked up at the assembled council and spoke clearly. I promised them nothing. I won their game fairly. I bought humanity 1,000 years. And from the looks on all your faces, I'm guessing you think that was a mistake.